So I know we're not in person, but you know, we would like to know if we were in person, and I'm thinking there would be like music as each of you come out. You get to choose what song that you would walk to the stage to. So as I introduce each of you, if you could just share what that song would be as you're strutting down the runway to join us on the stage. So I'll start with Andrea Womack, and just to give some background about her, she is the Vice President of Human Resources Manager at Bank of America with 22 years of experience. Andrea also serves with the Mentoring in Texas program and helps with the Employee Resource Group, and is a lead advisor with their Black Professional Network. So Andrea, go ahead and share with us, what would your song be?
So Tia, I know you and I were IMing back and forth via LinkedIn. I said, of all the questions that were on the list, I'm like, that's the one that I had to really stop and think about. So where I landed, where I ultimately landed was Alicia Keys' Girl on Fire.
I love it.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's a really good choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So next up, we have Andrella Thomas, who is a manager and human resource consultant for diversity and inclusion and belonging at CapitalOne. So welcome, Andrella. What is your song of choice?
Oh, definitely Jill Scott, Golden. That is my favorite song. And it's because, so I'm just going to be like, quote really quickly, the favorite part of that song that I love is when she says, I'm taking my own freedom, putting it in my song, singing it loud and strong, all day long. I'm taking my freedom, putting it in my stroll. I'll be high stepping, y'all, letting the unfold.
Okay, all right.
Look at you.
Yes.
Looking at the lyrics as well.
You're taking us to church, Andrella. All right.
Yes.
Oh man, I love it.
So quick funny joke. Eric Battle and I sang in the choir together. So he's probably laughing that I'm quoting the lyrics.
I mean, if you would like to sing the lyrics, please.
That was one option, but I'll put it off the table.
She has a beautiful voice.
Awesome. Right. See, Eric is co-signing for you, Andrella. And Eric, we have you next. So we have Eric Battle, who is Senior Vice President of Risk Oversight Monitoring at Santander Consumer USA, who happens to be transitioning to a new role as Senior Vice President of Workforce Diversity and Inclusion in the newly formed Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office at Santander. So welcome, Eric. Thank you for joining us here. What song are you coming down the run? Hopefully not the ringtone that's playing, but what's your song of choice?
Well, mine is going to be being an old athlete, a little bit past my prime. I've always wanted to walk in on the Chicago Bulls intro theme song.
Oh, wow.
That's just something I've always wanted to just walk in on and have my name introduced.
Oh my goodness.
Next time, Eric, if we are on a panel, I got you. I will find that and do that for you so you can strut down to the stage.
I have it as a ringtone.
Awesome. Okay, love it. All right. And last but not least, we have Jessica Taylor. And Jessica and I were actually on a panel together for Impact Ventures a couple years ago. Before I started on the board, so love having you here today as well. And Jessica is a National Diversity and Inclusion Business Partner for Toyota with more than 10 years of experience in diversity initiatives, education, and the nonprofit sector. So welcome, Jessica. And what is your song of choice?
My song will be Outstanding by the Gap Band, because I just wanted to get something that pumps the energy. I feel like when you hear it, it makes you want to dance. It feel like you're at a cookout or a family reunion. It just makes the place all warm and fuzzy. So I would definitely say Outstanding.
Like it.
Love
it.
Good
choice.
So,
good choice.
Great choices. We're getting some cosigns from the audience as well. So you guys have some great taste in selection. So we are going to go ahead and transition to our questions. And just a reminder, for everyone, our topic today is diversity, equity, inclusion. Where do we go from here? So you could have chosen any of the breakout sessions. You chose this one right here. So we're very glad to have you. So the first question that I have today is in regards to the DEI efforts of the past. So we have seen that some would say in some areas, companies have been a bit lackluster and almost box checking, especially for people of color. With the new emphasis on DEI work, what is your company doing to support people of color, minorities? So to start us off, Jessica, could you answer this? What's Toyota doing in that area?
Yeah, so first, I'm no longer with Toyota, so I wanted to provide that there too as well. I have transitioned to another company, but still very exciting. So I can share some of the additional work that I've actually been seeing in the space within diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a few things that I've noticed there is, one, there has been a heightened awareness. Now, I think before people made these conversations, made these statements, and it was like, well, let's think about it. Let's look at it. Let's do more research. But I think right now we actually have that heightened awareness and acknowledgement. And it's really causing companies to say, okay, what are some things that we can do to truly, one, make an impact? But I think the other portion for us is what is it that we would like to see, and being very intentional with what those things are. So a few things that I have noticed in this space that I really was impressed with. One, we're having some of the SMART goals that some of the companies have put out that were measurable with targets and deadlines. Those are the things that I really enjoy seeing, because we can always say we want to see more people of color in senior leadership, but until we start putting some targets behind it with some dates of when we just like to achieve those things, I think that we still having that same conversation, right? Another thing that I was really impressed with and that I like to see in this space was the increasing our representation and support of minority-owned businesses from the supplier diversity side. Mm-hmm. So that was something else that I noticed. It wasn't the highest. I would love to see that at the top of a lot of conversations, because when you're looking at that, you're thinking about supplier diversity, you're also impacting the bottom lines for small businesses as well, too. So those, I would say, are two of the biggest things that I saw that I really enjoyed. Oh, lastly, and then the opportunity for mentorship and sponsorship, particularly sponsorship, moving people through the company as opposed to just mentoring them in their space. How can we, now that we've mentored you, now we've done career development, how can we get you to the next phase of where you need to be within your career so that we can actually see that diversity in all levels of the organization?
I love that, especially around the call out around metrics, because what we've seen before, a lot of the solutions for diversity has been, maybe take some unconscious bias training, right? Yeah. Really have those SMART goals or targets that you're able to see what type of impact that training is having. So could you provide just a maybe one or two examples of some key targets that you would like to look at?
Yeah, so I think a few of them were PepsiCo and also Coke made some around how many African-American executives they would like to have hired at the senior level by the end of, I think it was 2024, right? It was a very specific number of what they would like to see done there. I think another one too was for companies who are looking to see how they can also increase within mid-level management, the amount of people and also women of color in those spaces as well too. So one, in terms of the representation, I think is one thing that's amazing. But another thing that I had noticed was also the conversation around equity. And I think that's very important too, is also ensuring that we're on parity with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. How about for you, Andrea, with your extensive background within diversity, I'm sure you've seen the transition of where we were in the past to where we are now. What things have you seen that have been targeted for, Black and brown people at companies?
Yeah, I would say in general, and specifically, a lot of what Bank of America has been doing is last year in June, we actually came forward with a $1 billion commitment over 4 years. And it was really focused on 4 primary areas, one being health. So when you think about the ongoing health crisis that we continue to face, the other around jobs. So think about our impacting the ability to partner with local community college and also HBCUs across the US. So not only thinking about looking at their existing curriculums to say, are they really focusing on the skills of the future? But then behind that is job creation. So ensuring that we have the rock solid curriculums in place so that on the outset of that, they're able to find gainful employment in their local communities. And the other pieces of that are small business and affordable housing. So as we continue to think about how do we ensure that we have the right opportunities for our Black and Brown communities, especially our entrepreneurs, and events like today, where we can get them the right level of funding so they can help, support, whether they're filling the gap for existing products and services that don't exist today, or they're looking to enhance things that may exist to take those things to the future. But obviously, with Bank of America being highly focused on affordable housing, again, really ensuring that as folks are looking to think long-term about their commitment to home ownership, ensuring that we're having the right impact, whether it's here across North Texas or even more broadly across the entire U.S. Other things that I think are also really important is how are we impacting on campus? So whether it's programs like student leaders or pathways or interactions with Year Up, there's opportunities again for us to reach back and ensuring that we're having the right level of impact to have that pull through. So when we think about long-term economic opportunity and lift, both in those Black and Brown communities. So those are a lot of the things that I've seen Bank of America come to the table with. But I think as a function of that, you're seeing lots of other major organizations come forward and saying, we're not just saying, yes, this is the right thing to do, but we're putting dollars to that so we can actually have some major impact.
Right. Yeah. I love that it's not just, writing a check, right? Because we have some companies do that. And my thought is, I would hope that someone, if we could just write a check to erase racism, they would have written that a long time ago. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to transition to my next question. And this one is for you, Andrella, in regards to, last year we had the murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. And we definitely felt the shift of DEI work. What has been the biggest change at CapitalOne since those events occurred?
Yeah, I think outside of some of the work that we've done with investing $10 million towards organizations that really focus on advancing the cause of racial injustice in the Black communities, we've had our associates, like over 4,000 associates, have given $750,000 to nonprofits, and we've matched that dollar for dollar. But I think outside of kind of the monetary contributions that we've made to the community, it's really about how we mobilized a team of DEI professionals. It wasn't just about having one person be the sole owner of DEI work. We've increased our team from probably a team of maybe 8 to 10 people to around 40-something DEI professionals in our organization. And that team was really responsible for delivering educational resources, not just for our associates, but for our leaders. We realized we needed to take our leaders on a journey so that they feel more open and comfortable with having courageous conversations. Our associates had a huge response to what had happened in the Black community. And so myself, being a Black woman, I was probably the one that was being tapped on every single day. Hey, Andrella, our associates need someone to talk to. But I was also dealing as a mother of a Black boy, a Black daughter, and a Black husband. Like I was also dealing. So I decided to have conversations with Black associates. We talked about 2,000 Black associates and just allowed them to just open up and be honest and vulnerable about their experiences and their reaction and response to that. Before the pre-George Floyd, we were doing all the educational things, the training, and then after all of this happened, all the training went out of the window. Like, I don't even know what you taught me how to have this conversation, but I completely forgot.
Right.
And leaders were so afraid, especially when you deal with leaders that are not Black leaders. The first thing they would say to me is, Andrella, I don't know what to say because I'm not Black. And one of my colleagues said it just so beautifully. She said, if you're a human, you are qualified to have this type of conversation. Right. And so we started to have more and more courageous conversations around racial inequities, and our associates started to share their stories. And just so much work has happened around development of our associates. We've created development programs. And then quickly we realized as DEI professionals, it's not about fixing the associate. It's about bringing everybody along this journey to tell them, like, there's an education that needs to happen for people that control the systems. Let's also get into that space as well and have conversations about what we need to do to fix this. Because I think George Floyd created this elevation of maybe trauma and experiences that associates have suppressed for so long. And then just opened the floodgates for people to say, well, I remember this happened to me at work or outside of work. And so we had so much work to do to fix and to really support our associates And then mental health resources. We gave them so many mental health resources. I brought on a Black grief counselor because associates were grieving the pain and loss of the members of the Black community. So we brought on a grief counselor to help associates kind of work through that emotional response to that. And so that is some of the work that we've done pre-George Floyd and post.
That's huge. And seeing a lot of like connection to, you know, if you're human, you are part of the conversation, right? There's no magic formula for having the discussions or certain trainings. Yeah. So really, really great insight to what Capital One is doing. How about for you, Eric, at Santander? You know, you are now going to be VP in DEI, so it sounds like there has been some changes there. What other changes have you seen in the last 8 to 9 months?
Yeah, at Santander, I'm really, really pleased and impressed with what has happened prior to May 25th, the George Floyd. The only presence we really had from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective was we had employee networking groups. They weren't even resource groups yet. But after that, we've, at the leadership of our president and CEO, who has totally embraced diversity, equity, and inclusion, we went on we're on a journey which we're calling cultural transformation. We're just basically transforming the entire organization. And we started that. I was very fortunate to be able to organize 20 listening sessions for our CEO. And we started with Black employees and 10 to 15 people just sitting there. And he was really concerned about the emotional well-being of people. And he just listened and let them, you know, have some very, very courageous conversations because we were dealing with so many things. But even before the listening sessions, he communicated. He didn't know exactly what to say, and he told us that he didn't have all the answers. And just him opening up and being vulnerable to the entire organization and saying, I'm intentionally going to do something about this, made all the difference in the world. And it really helped set the stage for our listening sessions. After the listening sessions, we actually formed our very first Diversity and Inclusion Council. And fortunately for us, our chief legal officer, the CEO, chief human resources officer, and our chief risk officer were fully engaged and wanted this to happen. And so we actually had them plus some individuals like myself. We brought in a consultant to help us form this committee and council and drive forward. We came up with these 16 or 10 priorities, which included external vendors, supplier diversity, the employees, and then we actually even started to have listening sessions with our employee networking groups, transferred their name to now they're resource groups with a new priority to make sure that they are really and truly looking at policies, procedures, and processes that are barriers and submitting those things to us. We've really come up with some very good things. And then the last thing that I will mention is we've never had a chief diversity officer. January 1, we actually hired Dr. Vanidia Hendricks as our chief diversity officer. She's in the process of actually staffing a team to basically take all of those actionable items that we've gotten from the Diversity Council, and we're actually putting those things into place. So in a very short period of time, we've really made a lot of significant changes, but the key is cultural transformation. He wants to change the culture, and I think that's huge.
That's phenomenal.
And you've hit all aspects, but truly it sounds like the employees are at the heart of the decisions that have been made. And I also heard that y'all are hiring, you know,
write your name down.
So look up Eric Battle, LinkedIn, right?
Yes, you need to connect there.
TIA. Yeah. Got it.
I'm pretty sure Intuit would like me to remain, but if anyone else is definitely looking, please connect with Eric. So going back to Andrella, you touched on this a bit, but I know for me as an employee resource group leader, the unsolicited spotlight on Black people and helping our members having to navigate through this was not something I signed up for, right? So as we are all Black people and we're trying to navigate through a pandemic and also trying to lead the charge within the DEI space, how do you all take care of yourself and your mental health? Like, how are you doing through all of the events that have occurred in 2020 and where we are now? So I'll start with Jessica, if you're okay with kicking us off with that question.
Sure. I would say the first thing that I had to do was to create boundaries within my space. Because at first it was my phone started ringing and then I'm getting the texts and then people are forwarding me emails and screenshotting stuff that's on Facebook that employees are saying. And it was just coming so fast. And I really had to stop and just, okay, let's set some boundaries, right? And I don't really feel that all the time. We really take a look at what that weekend, okay? So we say George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, but that weekend, if we think about it, kicked off with the situation with the Black guy in Georgia who was accused of robbing someone by the pastor who would end up being doing some things that he had no business doing at a hotel. It then went to Christian Cooper in New York with the lady with the dog. That was like the very next day. And the day after that, then we have the George Floyd incident, which just so happens to fall on the exact same weekend as the Tulsa Wall Street Black Massacre. The exact same weekend, 100 years to the day, we're at Black Wall Street in Tulsa on the same Memorial Day weekend, right? So we have this going on. And then as Andrella mentioned earlier, there's trauma because there was, for some people, depending on your age, when I was talking to my dad about it, he was so mad about the Christian Cooper thing. He said, here we go with this Emmett Till stuff all over again. That incident to him triggered Emmett Till, the fact that we still hadn't had justice in that space. And to see that someone could say something like that, that could possibly end someone's life if we're not careful, right? Then we moved into George Floyd, and then and so I think in addition to us living through a pandemic, we didn't get a chance to breathe because we started going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And then for the Black community, we can go ahead and layer on icons. We were still with Kobe Bryant. Then after we came out of that, we had Chadwick, and it was just one after another. We're just losing all of these people. And for us, I think we've all felt a lot of that too, right? Even though you don't know them personally, you still feel like, oh my God, Kobe, like I couldn't even go to work the next day, right? But I think the best thing for me was, one, creating boundaries, two, promoting self-care. So what can I do to protect my peace? And then in some spaces, I really just went into a fast for a minute. I fasted from social media. I fasted from news. I fasted from all those things because while I'm still, to Andrella's point, trying to mentor and support and listen to my team members and listen to people cry and all those things on me, I needed a space to do that as well, and I did not have that because I was so busy pouring that my cup was empty. And I'm not a good professional, DE&I professional, a Jessica professional. I'm not a good sister or anything if my cup is empty, because now I'm just giving you the bare minimum of what I have. So I really had to kind of step back and go say, okay, Lord, what is it that you want from me in this space right now? And how can you support me so that I can be of support to other people, right? And then at the same time, understand that I couldn't take it all. So I start outsourcing some things. I know a lot of Black therapists. And there was this platform called Therapy for Black Girls and Therapy for Black Men. And I would start sending it to my friends. Hey, I know we started talking about George Floyd, but in the conversation, you started venturing, I'm not qualified for this. However, I think you should look at this platform. And I even reached out to the time when I was at Toyota, reached out to our HR team. I know we have mental health counseling with our benefits. We have like the 6 free sessions with employee assistance. Has there been any conversation about us increasing that for team members who express that they need additional support and help, right? And then two, have we sent out a publication to team members letting them know that this is a resource? So a few of those things is really not necessarily using it to where I'm taking all of it, but also using this to show our the team members at the time, these are some other resources that the company provides that you may not be aware of that you should take advantage of right now. And then also let them know, we have PTO, take some days, take some time, go process it. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to lay down, lay it down. There's a lot going on. And then too, we're still dealing with dying of COVID while we're locked in the house. We can't see our friends. And I think a lot of our culture is very interactive. We laugh, I gotta hit you, I gotta hug you, I gotta touch you, I gotta push you. All of this is us. Yeah. So now I'm laughing by myself and I'm like, I just feel because where are my friends? Where are my family? Right. And I think that's something we have to think about. And another thing I would say too for companies, I saw this, I think it was one of the tech companies, but another thing that they focused on, I think other ones were the amount of team members, millennials that had moved to the area, moved without family. So a lot of these people are locked in their house without family, without friends, some without pets, and they're dealing with all of this that's going on. How are we supporting them in those spaces? So I really think for me, it was self-care, boundaries, providing resources to those who needed it, and also knowing when my cup was empty, when I needed to step back, pull away, binge some Netflix, drink some great coffee, and kind of move on to the next thing.
Yeah, Tia, I really enjoyed what Jessica just walked through. I just wanted to mention one other thing. It really spurred us also. All the things that Jessica talked about are happening. But on top of that, there are some of our employees who we actually have 4 call centers, one in North Richland Hills, one in Colorado, one in Mesa, who have the responsibility to actually receive calls from people who are going through COVID-related incidents, economic problems. And we're asking those folks to almost be counselors to people who have issues. And so the mental health aspect is so critical, because not only are we dealing with things, we're asking some of these employees to now counsel someone else who's going through. That's why it's very, very critical we understand the emotional well-being of our employees.
Yeah. Agreed. No, all great things that you all touched on. It is important that you protect your magic, right? That's, making sure your cup isn't empty. So I am gonna, go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I would say to myself, you can't be exceptional if you're exhausted.
That's right.
I mean, you just can't. And I realized that when, after having all these conversations with associates about what had happened in this last summer, I was cooking and I didn't realize what I was doing. And I just threw a whole thing of meat in hot boiling water, which is not the place it was supposed to go. And that was a self-check for me. And at that moment, I text my boss and I said, I need a day. I need a day for just Andrella, because I'm a natural empath. And I was just taking on the emotions of everyone that I had talked to, close to 2,000 associates. Just imagine that building up in you and you're suppressing your own response to everything. And so I just thought to myself, I can't be exceptional if I'm exhausted. I need to take a break. Right. And so I finally took some time for myself. And I did speak to a mental health professional, but also challenge the organization that if we are going to leverage mental health resources, that we need to look at it as well, the diversity makeup of those individuals that are partners or external partners in this space as well. Because there's a cultural thing that is also existing when we talk about mental health, specifically in the Black community. A lot of the things that we deal with mentally are not checked. And so I wanted to make sure that we have a space where associates feel comfortable to talk to individuals that could relate to their experiences as well. So we did challenge our mental health group to make sure that there was diversity represented for our Black and Brown associates.
Yes, that's huge. And just to repeat the resources Jessica mentioned, therapy for Black girls and therapy for Black men, they are great. I have my therapist on speed dial. So there's some challenging things that you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself. So I'm going to transition us to just, the work that Impact Ventures is doing is amazing, because underrepresented minorities have a much bigger hill to climb. We also know that small businesses are huge clients of the folks that we have here on the panel. So, looking at an article, the Federal Reserve has even reported that Black business owners are denied loans at twice the rate of white business owners. So how are your companies thinking of supporting Black and Brown entrepreneurs and small business owners? And what advice do you have for them? And I'll start with you, Andrea, for Bank of America.
Yeah, absolutely. I touched on earlier that $4 billion commitment, and pieces of that, again, is aligned back to small business. There's actually $50 million that's supporting specifically to our minority deposit institutions, and then another $200 million that's aligned to our minority entrepreneur business funds. So huge efforts put behind those to ensure that there's access to capital, because a lot of times that's the primary challenge. You might have a phenomenal idea, but if you don't have the funding support there to bring it to life, it never comes to fruition. So that's a huge part of what we're committed to ongoing. And this is both, pre-crisis, pre-pandemic, but just kind of a reinforcement. But again, I think the other thing that really becomes important is how do we bring other major national organizations to the table to say, hey, this is the right thing to do, and how do we ensure that we're putting forth strategies together to allow for that economic opportunity to take hold in those local communities? And then kind of the second part of your question around what should entrepreneurs do, and again, I touched a little bit on this, again, whether they're looking to fill that gap for something that doesn't exist today, like some of the pitches that you guys were referencing earlier around education and tech, which in this current, posture where we can't have kids who are not fully engaged, looking for opportunities to fill that gap, or again, is it something that they can enhance on a product and service that looks today? But more so, whether they're existing entrepreneurs looking to scale or they're starting from scratch, is how can you truly be operationally efficient? So heaven forbid, if we find ourselves in the midst of crisis like this, you're able to weather the storm. So those would just be, some of the things that I would offer, and just touching on just a couple of things that Bank of America is doing around small business support, specifically in those Black and Brown communities.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah. We have 5, so I'm going to take us to our last question. I'd love to hear everyone take a minute or two to answer. And so that is, people are really paying attention to this work, right? We've got people here. It does seem to be the hot topic, and we're getting resources that we haven't gotten before, and people are taking anti-racism seriously. So as you review your company's DEI strategy for the next couple of years, what are you all most excited about? So I'll tell Andrella, do you want to start us off with that question?
Yes. Our CEO has declared his commitment to what's called our CapitalOne Core Initiative, which stands for CapitalOne Racial Equity Initiative. I'm super excited about that, because the first part of that focus is to really help mobilize the talent within CapitalOne, and thinking about how do we create equitable opportunities for success for our Black and Latinx associates. So he has put together a powerhouse team of executive leaders across our division, including the leaders of our Black BRGs, our Hispanic BRGs. And so that huge partnership, I think when we talk about racial equity, it should always start at home. We don't have the solid 4 walls, but now we have the virtual 4 walls. Right. But we can't say that we are promoters of this work if we're not doing it within our own establishment. And so this core initiative really helped our associates actually see that, we're not just out there putting out statements publicly about here's the work that we're doing for the community, and then we're in our organization feeling like we don't belong. Right. And so this core initiative is something that's going to make the connection not only with the work we're doing in the community, but the work we're doing for our associates internally. So being a member of the DE&I team right now is so exciting for me, because I'm able to kind of touch all of those spaces. And community is really a passion of mine, because my mom was an abuse survivor. We came here with nothing but the clothes on our back, her and 5 kids. And just my passion to give back, and seeing that CapitalOne is investing all of this money to do that, and I'm able to be a part of that. I feel so amazing about this work that's coming in 2021 and beyond.
That's awesome. I see the excitement in that.
Yes, I'm like,
yes, let's do it. Cool. All right, Eric, how about for you?
Since Andrella took 4 minutes and 30 minutes seconds over 5.
Don't start.
I'm going to say I'll be quick. The thing that I'm most excited about is this time it's actually real. It's real. And so much so that we've got our CEO published 4 pillars of our strategic vision for 2021. Diversity, equity, inclusion is one of those. Mm-hmm. And so the commitment is there. There's a lot of things underneath it. But since I only had 30 seconds, I'll just mention that it's real.
Oh man, thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Well, look, I got one throwing it there for you too. This was actually to Andrea's comment earlier about what minority businesses do. I want to say one thing is get MBE and WBE certified. That was the one thing I just want to add to hers was become a certified minority-owned business or woman-owned business. That is the one thing. You can do that with your council in your city or your state. But the more important thing in order for us to do business with small businesses and Black-owned businesses, you need to be certified. And so I think that that's one of the big things in addition to everything she said on that. And then the one thing I'm excited about, you know, I tell everybody DE&I is like, it's not like a car. It's not going to come off the line in 30 seconds complete. That's right. This is like being where you put that investment in kindergarten and you wait until college to see what this child who was born you out all these years has turned out to be, right? I used to be a teacher, so I can say that. So that's what DE&I is. It's a long-term game. And we have to understand that this is a marathon, not a sprint, but being committed to the work. So in addition to what Eric said, I feel a lot of this does feel really real. But I love that in a lot of spaces we have measurements because people don't do what you expect them to do. They do what you expect. So when we're not inspecting the data and the numbers, we can't expect much more to come from it. So I'm glad that we're in this position now where we can do both of those things.
Tia, can I have 10 seconds?
I can give you 10 seconds.
All right, Eric, you're taking 10, I'm a 15.
Okay. Real quick. So I just wanted to touch on the MWBE. The businesses that are on and listening, they should be open to being a supplier to a supplier. Don't have to be a direct. So that is a key that they should also look to supply some of the vendors that we already do business with. That is a way in also.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, I agree. And then
Andrea,
really, Tia, I'll wrap it up.
Take the time you need.
No, I was going to say, I'll wrap it up really quickly. I think, Andrella, you made such a solid point around not just making public statements that look good, but then your own house is not where it should be. So I would say from just a transparency thing, that's the one thing that I've really loved about the work that Make of America started, even pre-pandemic, pre-George Floyd, with coming out with our human capital report to say, this is where we stand right now. This is where we are with diversity of our board. This is where we are with the diversity and the makeup of our organization. And yes, we absolutely have work to do. So what are we doing top of house, whether it's with our executive leadership and the DE&I councils that continue to be formed, but locally since the crisis, whether it's via conversations that we've had over 160,000 of our 200,000 employees engage in courageous conversations, but now they're ready to say, okay, I want to get my hands dirty. What can I do to have some impact? So we're starting to have race equity and economic opportunity councils that are created all across the U.S. to say, okay, we have this $1 billion commitment. We have some opportunities internally so we can ensure that we have diversity at all levels of the organization. How are we getting that voice of the employee at the table? Because they have ideas and suggestions in partnership with our local employee network groups to say, how do we have impact, not just within the community, but also so I can ensure that I can continue to grow my career at Bank of America in the long term, regardless of my race, ethnicity, or gender, socioeconomic status, LGBTQ plus status, etc. So that's a lot of the work that we've continued to kick off. But the transparency has been the thing that I've been most proud of, to say, this is where we are. We have some work to do. So let's all roll up our sleeves together to make that happen.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure everyone appreciates that, right? That's important for the employees. And you don't want them to come back and say, well, they're not doing anything internally compared to outside. That's right. So again, they're at the heart of what we do. So we are at time. I just want to thank all of you for having this conversation with me on a Saturday, taking time out of your day and to get, you all look amazing. So, I don't know about you, but I've got my Nike slides on. So
I will in a minute. I'll be there with you, Thea. I'm going to be there with you.
Yes, soon. Awesome. But just to close us out, thank you, Impact Ventures, for having us today and allowing us to have the space to have this discussion. And thank you to EY for sponsoring this session. You can find all of our panelists on LinkedIn. I see some of you have already connected with them. So please reach out. Sorry we didn't have time for a Q&A, but I'm sure they're more than welcome to answer any questions that you have from here. So everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Please check out the other pitches that are happening for the second half, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.